By 1998, when Jerry Lynn and Rob Van Dam first squared off in a televised match, Jerry Lynn had already been competing in the squared circle for over a decade. Surprisingly, considering their 7-year age gap, Rob Van Dam had his first match only 2 years later, debuting in 1990. It's safe to say that by the time this rivalry got underway, both men knew what they were doing. March 21st, 1999, at the Living Dangerously pay-per-view, the two men battled for Rob Van Dam's ECW World Television Championship, which resulted in a time limit ending to the bout. Following 20 minutes of highly entertaining back-and-forth action, the referee awarded Jerry Lynn the victory, and thus the title, after the time limit had expired. Not wanting to become champion in such dubious circumstances, Jerry Lynn insisted and asked for a 5-minute time extension, giving him a chance to defeat RVD decisively via either pinfall or submission. This would ultimately cost Jerry Lynn, as within 2 minutes of the time extension, Rob Van Dam would hit his finishers and get the pin over Lynn. The next pay-per-view became Jerry Lynn's rematch for taking RVD to overtime the last time out. This time a stipulation was added: no time limit match. This would ensure that there would be a winner no matter what. This brings us to our topic today. Hardcore Heaven 1999. Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn for the ECW Television Championship in a no time limit match. Welcome everybody, my name is Karl Karufel, joined with Mighty Joe Morin, and this is Turnbuckle Rewind.
Yeah, absolutely, Karl. This week on Turnbuckle Rewind, we are going back to some ECW during a really high point in the company, and just because this is the second time that we've done an ECW match here, Karl, I thought, because we didn't do it on the last time we were talking about the match with Taz and Bam Bam, but ECW wasn't always Extreme Championship Wrestling. For those not in the know, the company was formerly known as Eastern Championship Wrestling. And yes, thank you to a Shane Douglas throwing down the title and coining the company Extreme Championship Wrestling. History was forever changed after that moment.
It definitely was. It was a very pivotal moment in the time of the company, making that transition from Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling.
Let me ask you a theoretical question here, Karl, before we get into the actual match itself here with this. If Eastern Championship Wrestling does not become Extreme Championship Wrestling, does the whole course of, like, even the Monday Night War, I mean, it because ECW played a pretty integral role in that part as well, I think wrestling would be in a very different place had this not happened.
I don't know necessarily that it would be in a totally different place, but I do believe that we would not have really seen Eastern Championship Wrestling in such a limelight as Extreme Championship Wrestling was. Yeah,
and then, a lot of the influence trickled over into WWE as well. They did incorporate a lot of these kind of extreme elements into their product, especially after they absorbed what ECW was, but I mean, even when ECW was kind of going, I mean, there was definitely an influence there that trickled over to the WWE. Like they saw it was kind of going, we need to kind of incorporate this into our product as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it did have an influence. 100% it did. And like you said, especially after acquisition of ECW, bringing that over as well. We kind of saw a little bit of it before that, but really it came to a head, we could say, come that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking at the two guys in the match here, first of all, the challenger, Jerry Lynn. For those of you who have not necessarily heard of this man or watched any of his matches, you're in for a treat with this one, and then you're probably going to want to go and watch a lot of his matches. He's a guy that, even just looking at his background in the business, even who helped him, with the training aspects, one of his main trainers, Eddie Sharkey, that guy has trained a who's who in this wrestling business. He was definitely trained by one of the best. And what's interesting here, Karl, kind of looking at this in retrospect, when I see Jerry Lynn in the ring, I don't know if you pick up on this similarity. I see, like, even just stature-wise and movement kind of wise in the ring, he reminds me a lot of Kenny Omega. To a certain extent, even just like physicality, like even when I just look, not necessarily from a distance or just kind of glancing, but I mean, I could mistake him for like a young Kenny Omega at the time.
You know what? Yeah, I mean that's very fair to say. Yeah.
Definitely in-ring ability. I mean, is definitely different styles, but just like at first glance, I'm like, that almost kind of look like Kenny. But I just thought I'd make that known there. But and then the other person in this match, it's interesting that we're doing this match this week, given what's coming up with WrestleMania weekend. Currently, we're talking Rob Van Dam. Now, you want to talk training and getting to the business. I mean, this man was not trained by the Iron Sheik, because that always seems to be mistaken. He was trained by the original Sheik, somebody who's a very much a legendary figure in professional wrestling, and somebody that I think kind of goes largely forgotten, and unfairly so.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Forgotten, definitely, because I mean the character itself wasn't as big as the Iron Sheik. Yeah. The original Sheik does kind of go forgotten. Yeah,
definitely go check him out. It's definitely he was an original character. I think is definitely the best way I can put it. The original Sheik, he was something else.
Oh yes.
But yeah, getting into this match here, Karl. I guess when we pull it up here, when we'll start watching, immediately, the first thing that whenever I see one of these matches, that ECW crowd and the whole atmosphere, I mean, it was just so different isn't the word that initially I'm looking for. Just the whole atmosphere, just it was unique. I think is the best way I can kind of put it. At the time, I was more when it comes to my wrestling viewing at this time, I wasn't necessarily like not aware, maybe like ignorant to the fact that there was other wrestling out there, but I didn't see a lot of this ECW stuff when it was originally kind of happening, because we were kind of inside that, well, me, I can't speak for everybody, but I was kind of really in a WWE bubble at this point, and then I started kind of getting into some WCW, but ECW wasn't even on my radar at the time. I don't know about you, but...
Well, I mean, programming-wise, where we lived, I mean, I lived in, the small town that I'm in, right? ECW really wasn't on the television. And if it was late at night. Mm-hmm. So it would be like a time when I was supposed to be in bed. Right? Whereas Raw and, Nitro, they were on primetime. So it was easier to see that. It was easier to catch all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just unfortunately, like I almost feel like, especially when I look at these in retrospect, I feel like I missed out on some really cool stuff and stuff that would have really interested me at the time. But thankfully, for the WWE Network, at least here in Canada, we can still go back and watch this stuff for our American friends. Hopefully, this doesn't become too hard to kind of watch, just because with Peacock and then going on, the network has become unfortunately kind of sketchy for our American friends. So hopefully, there's still going to be a way to watch this, because it is very adult content. As you're hopefully watching this along with us, a lot of mature language in this atmosphere around the ring, and even for some of the wrestlers, and even in some of the vignettes and the backstage stuff. It was very adult content when it came to professional wrestling.
It definitely was. But with as much adult content as there was on this show, they still kept to roots of professional wrestling.
Yes, sir.
Like we're seeing right here. First, we had Jerry Lynn come down to the ring, and then the champion, Rob Van Dam. So Rob Van Dam, as the champion, coming out second or coming out last, is always the way that it is within professional wrestling. The champion comes out last. The challenger or challengers come out first. So it was very cool to see that they still stuck with some professional wrestling classic when it comes to the promotion itself, and they didn't just take it in a totally different direction.
Yeah, and you also notice Rob Van Dam wearing that ECW Television Championship, not just carrying it or having it on a shoulder or dragging it behind him. He actually had it around his waist, in my opinion, as a true champion should be.
I agree with that.
But that's the old school fan in me, as always. One big takeaway from this, not only with the crowd, but everybody kind of involved in the actual match itself when it comes to the wrestling talent. One of my huge big takeaways from this match here, Karl, and I'm sure you picked up on it as well. We're talking that guy who just climbed out into the ring with Mr. Rob Van Dam. We're talking Mr. Bill Alfonso with that friggin' whistle. That is one of my big takeaways. What's your take on Fonzie with that whistle during this entire match, Karl?
You know what? It was, sure, it got annoying. It definitely did. But that was his gimmick. That was his character. Yep. I mean, it's like Jimmy Hart screaming into the megaphone, right? Same idea, except Bill Alfonso just had the whistle instead. So you weren't hearing his voice. You weren't hearing him scream. He was just blowing that stupid whistle. So, I mean, I get it. I totally do.
Yep. Because you can make the argument that, RVD, Rob Van Dam, however, which way you choose to coin him, he was arguably technically the bad guy in this match when you kind of look at the personalities. And Bill's purpose was to get you to hate him and therefore hate Rob Van Dam through him. So for those who, again, a little bit of wrestling 101 when it comes to this kind of stuff here, Karl, a lot of people will bitch and complain about Mr. Bill Alfonso and that whistle. Guess what? That is mission accomplished. His purpose, his job was to go out there and get you to absolutely despise that little weasel with that whistle. And that's exactly what he did.
Oh, yes, definitely. That is what he did.
Well, sure.
Talking about the roots again here, we have got, the referee holding up the championship in the ring, showing it around to all the sides to show all of the crowd. Another just classic when it comes to professional wrestling.
For sure. Now, as we start to get into the match itself here, because there was a little bit of beforehand stuff here, this match was a little slow to kind of get rolling. I don't know if you kind of picked up on that, but there was a lot of kind of side stuff going along here, and it did take them a little bit to kind of start to get any kind of flow going. I know that largely probably due to the crowd there, they were kind of playing to them, but I like a match to start off a little bit quicker, but not to take anything away from this match because it is still fantastic, but I would have liked things to kind of picked up a little bit sooner. That's one of my only critiques.
You know what? I get that. I understand that. I don't know. I think, again, it's just all playing to that crowd and playing to, like Jerry Lynn is standing in that ring. He's ready to go. Mm-hmm. He is 100% ready to go. But then we have got Rob Van Dam, who's pandering to the crowd and getting the crowd to hate him. So, I mean, mission accomplished again, and especially taking the time to do that. I mean, I think it was okay. Was it a little long? Yes.
A little on it. One other thing, because as always, I'm somebody that likes to kind of break things down a little bit here. Now, I'm not sure if you're in on this. This is something we can maybe do some research on, and maybe the next time we revisit an ECW match, we can confirm or debunk this. with the ECW ring, do we know if they were using the typical plank technique, or were they using the plywood method for their ring? Because it did look like, when I watched, especially this match and a lot of ECW matches, that ring looked like it had a fair amount of give to it.
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're going to have to take a look at and research. I don't know if it was a plank. I don't know if it was a board. I don't know if it was a spring ring. Like, I don't know what it was, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, in your time in the wrestling ring here, Karl, so because you're a former wrestler, I'd like to kind of pick your brain on this kind of stuff. And I'm not even sure if I've ever even asked you this, believe it or not. In all this time we've been doing this, have you wrestled in? I know you've wrestled in rings where it's where they use the planks in the ring. Have you ever wrestled in a ring where they use the plywood, or they use the other method?
Yep. Once.
If you had to compare the two, which was harder to work in?
Honestly,
or did you notice a difference? Did you notice
yes.
a noticeable difference?
Oh yeah, you definitely can.
Yeah.
You definitely can notice a difference.
Yeah, what exactly would that difference be? Like, it's a little bit more give.
Well, you got to figure with the like 2x4, the planks, right? There's the space in between each plank, which allows you to kind of move, and you feel that on underneath your feet a little bit as you're going around, right?
Gotcha.
Whereas with the plywood, it's just a solid piece of wood. Right. So, I mean, you could fit 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it was about six pieces of plywood. Mm-hmm. Right. So the areas and the spots where you're, stepping feel really different, because one part where 4 of them connect together, right, is a lot more loose than being in the center, right, being on that plywood. Right. So, I mean, and just structurally wise, plywood will break a lot easier than the planks will.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, you totally could tell the difference. I preferred working in plank.
Yeah.
I found it. I was a lot more comfortable, a lot easier.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like, I mean, even just the planks are like 2x12, I think 2x16s. I think it depends on the promotion, but they're thicker, and then the plywood being thinner. I mean, it feels like there'd be a little bit of a greater margin for error of pulling like a bam and go right through that sucker, right? So
right,
but,
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, again, in the start of this match, we're still kind of we're working the crowd, and Bill Alfonso blowing that whistle constantly during this match. We'll get to it later, because there was a bit of a break where we didn't get the whistling, but we'll get to that point. But
the match is. Yeah. I mean, the match might be kind of running a little slow here. It's not like there hasn't been any action. There actually has been. There's been some really good collar and elbow tie-ups. Yes. There's been a little bit of really good back and forth. There was a point where Rob Van Dam got Jerry Lynn backed into the corner, and then kind of just broke away, and then did his little thumb to his shoulders RVD thing, right? Just kind of playing that heel gimmick. So while it might be a little slow, there actually is work going on. It's not just pander.
For sure. Before we get into kind of the meat of the match, one thing that I wanted to mention before, an interesting thing, at least I think so, before this match, they actually did have like a pre-match, or like a dark match. Typically they do during most wrestling shows. The one that they had was interesting. It was a Danny Dorian versus Skull Von Crush. Now, for those who aren't aware of who Skull Von Crush is, that's actually Mr. Big Vito.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Vito LaGrasso, right? So an interesting thing there I thought I'd make note of. If you didn't, if people were to look into the show and see that name, that is Mr. Vito LaGrasso. It's a little cool little thing.
Yeah,
there.
So the action inside this ring here is starting to pick up a little bit. This is it's quick. It's very quick, and we've already got an injury here. Rob Van Dam has been busted open. just over his eye, just over into the side of his eye. So I mean, we're already, playing into that ECW type of style of hardcore and blood, and yeah, definitely it's there.
Yeah, for sure. And there have been some instances in wrestling where little minor injuries have happened and people have called the match and said, they were done. Not Mr. Rob Van Dam. He took it and went with it, and they continued the match. So being the professional that he is.
Oh, yeah, definitely he did. I mean, Bill Alfonso could see that he got busted open. And, when a little stop happened, Rob Van Dam was in the corner. Bill Alfonso got up onto that rope or onto that ring and over the ropes and was looking at Rob Van Dam and making sure that he was okay, playing that managerial type role that he should definitely be doing. And then, kind of going over to the referee and going, you need to look, right? So it was good. It was good.
For sure. And looking at, we're just going to the outside. One thing to make major note of here, very, very little padding on that floor. Lots of concrete and lots of metal barrier going on there.
There definitely is a lot of concrete there. The gym mats, that's all they were. The blue gym mats from when you were in grade school, that's all that they had on the outside. And they weren't even all connected together. No. They were just kind of sporadically placed and put out there. So lots of room for mistaken injury to happen on the outside as well.
And along with that, too, we have the added little difference, too. Now, this isn't completely unusual in wrestling, but definitely not necessarily the norm, I guess, would be that ramp connecting right to level with the mat. That's something that we see a little bit like an Impact and whatnot these days, but definitely something that, at least from my experience of watching a lot of wrestling, not something that was too commonplace.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. Back then, I believe for the major promotions, ECW was the only one that was really doing that. Every other company had an actual ramp that started up on a higher level and sloped down for you to then get into the ring.
Yeah, for sure. And it allowed them to kind of do some extreme spots and whatnot. Another question for you here, Karl, because it's something that's always been curious for me when it comes to extreme championship wrestling. Because I don't know if they've ever said it. I kind of assumed that pretty much every match is no disqualification, essentially. Because it seems like they let them go a lot.
I guess so, right? Like, I mean, that was all part of the allure of ECW, was that a lot of the matches were it was just hardcore professional wrestling.
Yep.
That's what it was. So not necessarily, I don't think that they were all, no disqualification matches. I'm sure if the referee had thought, something's gone a little too far, then, a stoppage would happen. But for the most part, it was more just hardcore matches.
Yeah, and speaking of hardcore, Mr. Jerry Lynn just took a dump to the outside there, and as we just mentioned, very little forgiveness on that outside at this particular show. So, like you'd mentioned, those mats not connected there, and he landed right dead smack in the middle where there was a lot of concrete. Poor guy. Ugh.
Yeah, he definitely did.
Yeah.
I mean, that was after a kick to the chest from Rob Van Dam. If you guys have not seen anything from Rob Van Dam, he is very skilled with his feet. Yep. His feet, his legs, his kicks, very much so a skilled competitor using those appendages. Just a fantastic competitor with that arsenal.
If I had to make a reference, and it is fitting because these two were involved, I always likened Rob Van Dam to Sabu, but he was a lot more successful in a lot of things that he tried to do. And when it came to the in-ring stuff, Sabu crashed and burned a lot doing the same things, but RVD was able to pull them off successfully for the most part. He was better at it than Sabu. I'll just put it that way.
He definitely was. Educated feet.
Yes.
That's what they kind of coined Rob Van Dam as having Sabu. They didn't coin that for him. Sabu, they just, coined him as the homicidal, genocidal, suicidal. Yeah, he was just nuts.
One other thing to make note of this here, Karl, and you may be able to prove me wrong on this one, but when I listened to the commentary, and this is something I think was also a little unusual, I only heard Joey Styles in commentary. Was it just a one-man booth for this show? Because I didn't hear anybody else on commentary during this match. Maybe that's different through the entire show because I still need to go through and watch this whole show. But at least during this match, Joey was by himself.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know if it was for the entire show or not, because to be honest, I just went and watched this match because I didn't want to have anything else in my brain coming into this. No. I just wanted this matchup, and that was it.
For sure.
So, but I mean, I can't answer that for you other than, during this match, yep.
And that's the thing with Joey, though. I mean, he was able to carry a lot of that by himself because, I mean, he was kind of like a precursor to like a Mauro Ranallo. We're very kind of similar stylings. And, I mean, Joey was always just very, very enthusiastic and very much into these matches. I mean, it's hard to – I mean, he even ended up spending some time in WWE himself. Joey just – I mean, he added so much intensity and energy into these matches that it really complemented what was going on extremely well, in my opinion.
Well, you just said it right there. Extremely
unintentional pun. I totally didn't mean that.
And I mean, like that's what Joey Styles was. Yeah. He was extreme when it came to his commentary. When you talk ECW, everything ECW was extreme, including the commentator.
Yep.
We just had some amazing stuff happening on the outside of the ring here. Amazing stuff happening into the crowd, flying into chairs, getting drop kicked over the railings. Crazy stuff happening. And now both men are bloody and cut open, and we've made our way back into the ring for this matchup now.
That rolling kind of thunder, I think they called it, that move. It's when he pulls it off and lands it, it's a pretty impressive move. That takes some agility and some athletic ability to pull off. Not too many guys can do that.
You're definitely right. That was another thing with Rob Van Dam. Very gymnastics style fighting when it came to Rob Van Dam, and it worked so well. And I mean, not even really like gymnastics style. I mean, I guess maybe a little more pre-parkour, we could almost say, type of style. But yes, gymnastic style. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing too with Jerry Lynn, whenever I watch some of his matches, it's always very interesting. He's not the kind of guy that would necessarily, like, he's not the one to like carry and be like the big kind of megastar, but he works so well with so many other people. Like, he's able to just, whoever it is that he's in the ring with, he's able to flow so well. He's not necessarily what you call like a ring general per se. I could maybe be proven wrong on that, but just whoever he has a match with. I mean, like I said at the top of the program here, that he is somebody who is horribly underrated in this business. If, like I said, I actually, after watching this, because this was my first time watching this match as well, that I want to watch more Rob Van Dam, but I definitely want to go watch more Jerry Lynn after this.
Definitely. I mean, like you heard in the monologue at the beginning as well, both of these men had been working for quite a while, with Jerry Lynn already having a decade underneath his belt, coming into this feud with Rob Van Dam. Simply amazing to be able to see somebody, still going after 10 years and being able to do the stuff that Jerry Lynn has done. And that continued. It's not as though, like, after this little ECW feud that he had with Rob Van Dam that he was done, because he definitely wasn't, which is fantastic, because more people got to see stuff from Jerry Lynn, and it's amazing to watch because he was so well versed in professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw him get dumped out into those chairs, those red plastic and metal chairs out in the crowd again. I'm guessing those aren't too great to land on. And we also saw set up outside the ring here, Karl. I would think, at least in my opinion, the signature foreign object in ECW, the table.
That's right. The table was set up by Jerry Lynn, and then Rob Van Dam came flying at him, and then he went over the railing into those red plastic chairs, and then another foreign object, very well known to Rob Van Dam, the steel chair being used against Jerry Lynn. It'll be interesting coming up here to see what happens with that table that has been set up, because we have seen already some stuff happening with the steel chair.
Mm-hmm. And with a lot of this outside stuff here, Karl, I mean, they got really up and close and personal to the fans on the outside. That was another big takeaway from a lot of these ECW matches. I mean, the crowd was like right there. That's something, looking at currently what's going on, due to COVID. I mean, this kind of stuff can't happen, but like that was a real big thing in ECW. They liked to bring the action up nice and close for the crowds. That's largely the reason why. I mean, to this day, fans are still chanting those three letters, is because they love that stuff.
It definitely is. I mean, ECW, that's what they were. They were a brand for the people. Talking about the people, I don't know that this person is going to be alive anymore, as Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn are up at the top of the turnbuckles near that table, and Rob Van Dam literally just threw Jerry Lynn with one arm over the top of his head, and Jerry Lynn fell down to the floor. Intense, insane stuff coming out of ECW. Thankfully, though, like we mentioned, both of these guys have worked for a while, said they understand and know how to do things safely and still make it look like it's $1 million and hurt like hell.
That one in particular, when you watch that, Lynn getting kind of dumped and catching the apron on the outside. Most recently, when I think of that, I think, was it with Zack Sabre Jr.? No, it wasn't Zack Sabre. It was Marty and some other wrestler. I think it was in Japan. They did this Spanish fly to the outside, and one of them essentially hit their head on the apron on the way down. That's kind of sort of what that reminded me of. I mean, damn, watching guys go to the outside and hitting the ring before landing to the outside, it makes me cringe every single time. I mean, damn.
Oh, yes.
Oof.
Yeah, I mean, the edge of that wrestling ring is the hardest part of that ring. That's where, there's no give. There is absolutely no give at those points on all four sides of that ring.
Yeah, so it's always, as somebody who watches a lot of wrestling and genuinely worries about the safety of these competitors, watching them land on that part of the ring. It takes my breath away, Karl, every single time, regardless of what match it is.
Oh, yes. I do believe we're probably about 22 to 25 minutes into this matchup already, and I believe we just had our first pinfall attempt after 22 minutes of a matchup. Rob Van Dam going and pin attempt on Jerry Lynn. Jerry Lynn kicking out of that, and the match continues.
Yeah, interesting, because I see a lot of both these days, but a lot of matches that I watch that are happening currently, it seems like that some of the pinfall attempts happen early sometimes, and then of course, one thing that we always talk about are the false finishes. New Japan, as much as I'm a fan of them, they do a lot of that. AEW does a lot of it, but here, I always liken it more to it's like a near fall as opposed to like a false finish. I don't know if it's just the talent in the ring or the atmosphere or the other individuals involved in the match or a combination of all of those. But a lot of times, it doesn't feel like that quote unquote false finish. It just felt like, okay, that was a pin attempt that didn't, necessarily pan out, or it didn't work. At least that's the impression I get when I watch back a match like this one.
Definitely me as well. I mean, sure, there may have been several pinning attempts, but they all felt warranted. They weren't just a pin attempt for absolutely no reason. A high stake move happened and a signature move happens, and then you go for that pin, and again, not necessarily, you know, that it's a false finish, but it was a pinning attempt because it was warranted. It wasn't just something that was like, yeah, let's just have, you know, 5 pins in a row. Ooh.
So, pivotal moment in this match here, Karl. As we saw earlier, the table getting set up. Jerry Lynn was able to put Mr. Rob Van Dam through that table. That was one of the more intense table shots that I've seen in quite a long time, my friend.
Definitely me as well. I mean, this table shot that happened, it imploded that ring. It was nuts. It definitely was nuts to see that implosion happen. Yeah. And it wasn't even just like a small break in the table. It imploded into like 16 different pieces.
Yeah. Sunset, what would that be? A sunset power bomb from inside the ring to the outside through a table. Damn, like I've seen that a few times now, and it's absolutely incredible that like both guys aren't dead after that. And one thing that I need to make note of here as well, Karl, watching Mr. Jerry Lynn work here, I know I've only seen a handful of his matches, and this is one of them. One thing that he did very well that a lot of current talent can really make note of here, he makes it so believable in there, especially when he is getting beat, when he's getting his ass handed to him. He sells those moves better than a lot of current wrestlers that I see.
You're right. He definitely does. That was always a strong point. Definitely. Could sell and make it look so believable, as opposed to, you know, like you said, today's age, where, you know, they just kind of get hit and, you know, like, yep, that was about it, right? And then they're just like, nothing happened. Well, I mean, no, something actually happened, and you need to make sure that it actually looks like something happened.
And you know, that's where when we're talking about false finishes versus near falls, where I think we really notice that as well, because a lot of times with those false finishes, quote unquote, then the person that was just getting pinned, a lot of times like they'll bounce right back, and it's like, wait a second, you just took a devastating move. In this case, right afterwards, you just took a power bomb, sunset flip power bomb through a table to the outside, and then what you got pinned, and now you're going to bounce right back. No, that's not how that works.
Nope,
right?
Not at all,
man.
And we had our first pin attempt from Jerry Lynn here as well. You know, on Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam kicking out after that devastating table shot that happened there. Just yeah, like I don't know. This is another little.
My favorite point in the match right here, Karl,
Yep,
was Fonzie getting hit with that friggin' chair, and we got to stop hearing that whistle for a little while. That whole exchange sequence of things there with the chair being tossed back and forth, only for Fonzie to eat it, that was fantastic. That was like move of the match for me.
I mean, it definitely was. And you know what was so great about this? I want to make mention of this because it isn't something that we really see a lot of anymore. They didn't slow down to set things up with this. Yeah. The chair was just being tossed back and forth, miss. And then, you know, Bill Alfonso getting hit in the face with that chair, Jerry Lynn throwing it, Rob Van Dam ducking it, and Bill Alfonso eating it. Yeah, it was just a super, super good exchange.
So another important spot in this match here, Karl. Typically, when you see this type of moment, clearly that didn't go as planned.
Yes.
We kept going right afterwards. We didn't try and repeat what just happened. We moved on to the next thing. We realized it was a mistake. And in the context of it too, it doesn't feel like a quote unquote botch. It's like, okay, well, that move didn't work, and they're just, it's like it would be in a fight. So you missed a kick or something, you just on to the next thing. They just kept flowing with it, and that's why that worked there. And it doesn't really, when you look back and watch this, somebody who looks at a lot of the technical aspects, that doesn't look like a glaring botch to me. The way that they, both professionals in this, the way that they handle that, perfect. Wrestlers today, do that, please.
Right? I mean, throughout that entire little thing that happened there, okay? So you got to remember, these guys have been beating the snot out of each other
Yes.
For this entire time here. And then, it looked as though there was kind of like trying to do a belly-to-belly or a belly-to-back suplex off the top turnbuckle. Jerry Lynn kind of fell. Rob Van Dam crotched himself on the top rope, but continued on with it. Didn't just kind of stop and climb back up and let Jerry Lynn get back up there again to do it. They just continued the flow of things. And in a situation like that, a good commentator is going to go, man, these guys are beating each other up so bad. Look at how tired and exhausted they are. They have absolutely no energy to continue on. Yep. Right? Like that's exactly what it looked like. And it was fantastic.
We just saw a couple of really well executed moves. Like we just saw RVD with that Arabian moonsault off the rope, which Mr. Christopher Daniels also does very effectively. And then we saw Jerry Lynn before that with one of my favorite moves in professional wrestling, that Gotch-style pile driver with shades of Minoru Suzuki there. Didn't pull it off, but that's always a very interesting, a legendary move in wrestling, that Gotch pile driver. But then that Arabian moonsault. I mean, RVD... him and Christopher Daniels, I would put right side by side for making that move look just bitchin', for lack of a better term.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right. And
100%.
Also, I mean, maybe only Eddie Guerrero did it better, but RVD killer frog splash. He, again, was maybe just below Eddie Guerrero for making that move look just absolutely amazing.
What I loved about Rob Van Dam's frog splash is that he made it look like it was so intense.
Yes, sir.
By adding just that extra little bounce after he lands on his opponent. He has that little bit of a bounce and flips over to make it look even more grandiose and more devastating, which was amazing to see.
Yeah, he put some mustard behind it, for lack of a better term. And speaking of which, we just and again, so we just got the three for the way that pinfall happened here, Karl. I'm also a very big fan of, just given everything that these guys had just gone through. We didn't see a classic cover there. We just saw RVD essentially almost kind of like collapse on top of Jerry Lynn and get that cover. That ending was perfect. Yeah, very well done.
Yeah, definitely. So we saw a second frog splash from Rob Van Dam, again with that extra oomph put onto it. You saw Rob Van Dam hit Jerry Lynn on the ground with that frog splash, that little bounce up that happened, and like his entire body just momentum-wise continued. But then, like you said, Rob Van Dam just kind of, all the energy is gone, and he collapses on top of Jerry Lynn. Not a conventional cover where you would see the T-shape cover with, chest on chest and hooking the leg. No, like Rob Van Dam essentially just on top of Jerry Lynn after that move for the pin.
Now, after the match here, Karl, we see something a little interesting, something I didn't expect here. We see a show of respect between these two guys. I mean, RVD went out of his way. I mean, Jerry was walking up the ramp and essentially called him back down and be like, no. Like, basically told him, hey, you know what? That was one hell of a match.
Definitely. And from what I understand, this was not a typical reaction or something typical from Rob Van Dam. He didn't do that.
Yep.
But he did with Jerry Lynn. And that just goes to show you why we decided to take a matchup like this with the history between these two men. That show of respect from Rob Van Dam to Jerry Lynn is all the reason why you need to watch this match.
One thing that I did like with this match here too, Karl, and this is something subtle that most people pick up on, but I definitely do, and I'm sure you must as well, that during the match, we don't see instant replays. Okay, so we see the whole match kind of happen, and we see a recap, we see replays after the fact. For me, I prefer that approach. That way I can stay invested in what's currently going on in the match and then see a recap afterwards. Do you like replays happening during the match, or are you kind of like me where you just like to see the whole match and then see, you know, the highlights and the craziness in this particular case after the fact?
I prefer after the fact. I really do.
Me too.
Just let me enjoy the matchup. I don't need to see 17 different replays throughout a match. Have production put together a really good package from that matchup and show it afterwards. Clearly, it can be done because ECW did it a lot.
Man, I get a laugh, and I almost feel like cheering out loud seeing Fonzie eat that chair, but that was fantastic. Oh my goodness. And it was a great camera angle. He was barely able to get his hands to protect his face on that one, but absolutely fantastic and a great match here, Karl. And I'm so glad that you picked this week because I knew it was going to be good, and it's one that I hadn't seen before, which is absolutely crazy to me given the amount of wrestling that I've watched that I haven't seen that before, but absolutely amazing, and I'm looking forward to a lot more ECW stuff because I haven't, like I mentioned, I have not seen a lot of the ECW stuff, so looking forward to it. Coming out of this here, Karl, to talk about what happened to both of these guys coming out of this match in their future afterwards, Jerry Lynn, I mean, has wrestled all over the place, Ring of Honor, he did some stuff in WWE, TNA, and is even currently working with All Elite Wrestling as a producer.
Yes.
As I had mentioned earlier, given that he was so damn good at, even when he was not winning and pulling off moves, well, he was getting beaten, and how good he would sell everything, something he could teach some of those younger talents over in their AEW. Sell better. Listen to Mr. Jerry Lynn. He knows what he's talking about. And,
definitely.
Glad to see him still involved in wrestling, even if it isn't in a in-ring capacity, because he did retire in 2013 and just kind of doing the producer and I would hope maybe passing on some of the training that he received from Mr. Eddie Sharkey to some of these younger guys.
Oh, I'm sure he probably is. I never got the chance to meet Jerry Lynn, to experience any, actual work with Jerry Lynn personally. But from what I am told, he's a very approachable
That's what I've heard too.
Gentleman. And it definitely is always willing to kind of sit down and pass along whatever knowledge he can. Yep. Now, if he's sitting down at a restaurant having a meal, no, he's not going to be very approachable because, well, he has a life too, right? But if you're at a show and you're there with Jerry Lynn, he'll take the time. As long as you respectfully, like you should with absolutely anybody, whether they are green in that ring or whether they are a Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Hulk Hogan, no matter who it is, you give that same respect to absolutely everybody. Yep. And as long as you go with a respectful, tone to you, Jerry Lynn is going to be a guy that will definitely talk with you.
For sure. And Mr. Rob Van Dam, I mean, what can we say about Rob Van Dam? I mean, even coming out of ECW, had a very, how can I word it, very interesting run in WWE, arguably very successful, but had some unfortunate, some injuries and some unfortunate things happen. I think he could have definitely had an even more successful run with the company. But even just recently, still doing things with Impact Wrestling, and of course, with interesting timing. I don't know if this all just kind of happened for a reason, but the fact that we happen to be talking about it leading into WrestleMania weekend and the Hall of Fame, Mr. Rob Van Dam is going to be one of the inductees into the 2021. I got my years all mixed up. 2021 WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, people saying that this isn't well deserved. This is well deserved.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I agree. It definitely is well deserved. Considering that the WWE, took ECW and owns all the rights to ECW, yep. WCW, and owns all the rights to everything from WCW. So essentially, you're looking at Rob Van Dam's career through all of the companies that the WWE
yep.
has and that they hold the rights to. So when you look at it in that respect, yes, definitely, because of his time in ECW and what he was able to do there, and just the fanfare that came from Rob Van Dam in ECW, yes. If we were to go just his WWE run, maybe not. I'm not so sure. But because of ECW, yeah, we were able to get Rob Van Dam.
Absolutely. And I mean, him and Mr. Cena, I think, involved in like one of my favorite matches of all time. I'm not sure where this ranks with you, but I'm sure we'll definitely talk about it on this show at some point. In 2006, that one night stand in that Hammerstein Ballroom. I mean, that was quite something to see Rob Van Dam versus John Cena, and essentially John being the bad guy in that match, man. That was quite something. That's actually a really interesting show to go back and watch, and there's a lot of really excellent matches that happened there. It was a pretty important pay-per-view that happened there. But yeah, I mean, Rob Van Dam, for those questioning whether he deserves or earns a spot in the WWE Hall of Fame, I say he has earned that spot very handedly.
Yes, I agree.
Yep. All right, Karl. Well, that wraps up here for this week. Another ECW match in the books for us. Looking forward to like I said, lots more of those, because like I said, I'm not necessarily inexperienced when it comes to ECW, but there's a lot that I haven't seen. I'm looking forward to watching a whole lot more of them. So pick more ECW. I'm definitely not going to say no.
Awesome.
I may end up picking some. I may end up even picking some by myself. All right, man. Well, I guess that about wraps up here for this week. Before we go, of course, we want to make sure, and as always, to say thank you to our friends over at Love Wrestling, Spencer and the gang over there, for giving us this magnificent platform to do what we love to do, Karl, and let's talk about wrestling, and in this particular case, to break down some of our favorite wrestling matches of all time.
Definitely. Make sure you can go check out lovewrestling.ca. That is where you're going to go to be able to get not only this show, but many other shows, articles, a whole bunch of really cool stuff about professional wrestling is all happening over at lovewrestling.ca. We do want to ask you, though, if you could, give us a rating. Give Love Wrestling a ranking. You know why? Because you guys have been amazing with giving us, some 4 or 5 star ratings, that we have climbed the ranks within the podcasting world in Canada for professional wrestling and have hit number 10. Top 10, baby.
Crazy,
is
right?
Where we have hit. And we can go higher if you guys help us out as well. So go and check out lovewrestling.ca. Follow Love Wrestling on all the social media platforms available there. There is links right there at lovewrestling.ca. Go and check out, I'll say it again, lovewrestling.ca.
Yeah, for sure. We're in the top 10. And including that top 10 are some very notable, like 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. We're kind of in that same conversation. Dude, if we can... If Love Wrestling could surpass Eric Bischoff, I would have to pinch myself to
right?
check whether that is real or not.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic stuff going on this platform as well. Make sure and check out our show, Turnbuckle Talk. Happens every Monday live on Facebook. The most recent episode is there. I had the privilege to sit down with Mr. Michael Jargo and Mr. Richard Bronson Vickery this week to talk all kinds of stuff there. So make sure and check that out over at TB Talk Pod on our social media there as well.
Awesome. All right, Joe. This has been awesome. I love talking ECW. Can't wait for next week. You guys want to know what's coming up next week? Well, you got to listen to us on our other show, Turnbuckle Talk. Monday, you'll find out Monday what our next topic for Turnbuckle Rewind will be.
And we
Love
wrestling.